This is the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 14th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. Now large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and said to them, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost to see whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying, 'This fellow began to build and was not able to finish.' Or what king, going out to wage war against another king, will not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes against him with 20,000? If he cannot, then while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for the terms of peace. So therefore, none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions." The Gospel of the Lord. So, sometimes you just get in a bad mood. You may not even be sure why. I'm not sure how it is in your life, but for me, sometimes I realize that I'm in a bad mood because I'm stewing about something that somebody else said or did. They may not even have said it or done it to me, but I heard it or I saw it, and now I can't stop stewing about it. And I've realized I'm in a bad mood. But sometimes for me, I'm in a bad mood because I've got too many things on my plate. I may not have realized it before, but when somebody gives me one more thing, that's it. And I realize I have reached the end of my rope, and I am in a bad mood. And sometimes I'm in a bad mood simply because of the way life is around me. I read the news or I see the trauma of others, and it's hard and depressing. Often I cannot do anything about it, and that actually makes it worse. And I realize that that also is one of the reasons that I'm in a bad mood. Maybe it's like this for you too. And in today's gospel reading, it seems that Jesus also is in a bad mood. Without any discernible reason, he suddenly turns on the happy crowds who are following him and starts telling them stuff about hating their relatives, taking up their cross, and giving up all their possessions. But I'm not really sure what's triggered this bad mood in Jesus. In other places in the Gospels, Jesus is in a bad mood for reasons more easy to understand. Sometimes Jesus is in a bad mood because somebody is trying to trap him in a question or triangulate him into their conflict. And often, Jesus' harsh words are in response to what people have said to him. Sometimes, Jesus seems to be in a bad mood because too many people are pressing in on him. He and his disciples do not even have time to eat, and Jesus realizes that they need to get in a boat and go somewhere for a little while and take a break. And sometimes, Jesus is in a bad mood because of what he sees or hears in the world around him. Jesus sees people in the temple who don't seem to care about being there for worship, or he hears about John the Baptist being murdered by Herod, and these things clearly upset him. But in today's gospel reading, everybody around Jesus is following him because they like him. Nobody is giving him a hard time. Everybody seems happy. It just seems like one big happy party of people meandering about from one great Jesus episode to the next. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's the thing that starts to tick Jesus off and put him in a bad mood. Jesus has all of these folks traveling along with him, and they seem to think that this is about watching the Jesus show, that this is about being with a happy crowd of people where everybody likes Jesus. And at least at this point, it's not causing any pain or any cost to any of them. And that seems to be eating at Jesus. And so he turns to them, and with some very harsh words, he tells them that this is not what being a disciple is really all about. Before the tough stuff happens, Jesus gives them some tough love. After all, he's on a journey to Jerusalem where he knows that everybody is going to turn against him, when following is going to be scary and painful and difficult, and in which he himself is literally going to take up his cross. Being a disciple, says Jesus, isn't simply about following along behind him and watching the show. Being a disciple also means being willing to be part of what Jesus is doing, especially when it's hard. Being a disciple also means being willing to be part of a group when the group is not popular in the world around you. And being a disciple means it will cost you in a variety of ways. But it's much more fun and exciting to just be part of a big happy crowd following Jesus. I suspect that a lot of those folks that day heard Jesus and they thought, whoa, Jesus is in kind of bad mood today, but tomorrow he'll probably be different, so we'll just keep moving along. I understand that. That's how I react a lot of time when I read words like this. Maybe the same is true for you. But bad mood or not, these are important words of Jesus that we actually shouldn't ignore. And they're not just addressed to people long ago who were literally following him about in the countryside. Instead, Luke records these unpopular words to remind disciples of all time and all places, including us, that being a disciple of Jesus and having that relationship actually be an important and life-giving experience in our lives means more than just being a part of a crowd who loves Jesus. For us, too, being disciples means there's cost. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German Lutheran pastor during the Second World War who resisted the Nazis. He wrote a book called The Cost of Discipleship, in which he pointed out, partly based on this text this morning, that being a disciple of Jesus is costly in ways that many people do not like to think about. In fact, he himself ended up being murdered in a concentration camp, so he knew what he was talking about. And while the cost of discipleship is thankfully not always that high, it's still true for us that if we want being a disciple of Jesus to have any meaning in our lives, it means that we have to be willing to do more than simply follow along and watch. And for us too, sometimes the cost means being willing to personally live our faith in the lives of others day in and day out. Many of you have heard me say this if you have been the parent of a kid I have taught in confirmation class. In fact, I had a parent meeting this week where I said it again, where I say to parents, you know what, when you bring your kids to confirmation, I and other people in the church, just like in Sunday school, we're going to tell them about how important Jesus is and all the ways in which we should live our faith. But that will have negligible impact in their lives compared to what you model each and every day. Because I can talk about how important Jesus is, but your kids will be more likely to think Jesus is important in their life if they see that Jesus is important in your life. What you do in your life each and every day, modeling what it means to be a disciple of Jesus, has more impact on others around you than anything we write in a book or say in a sermon. And that is true also for people who simply realize that you are the only church-going Christian that they know. How you act, how you live your life, the values you show because of your faith, those things have more impact than anything that anybody says. That's what people think this is what a disciple is all about. And that means each and every day being willing to live our lives differently. That's the cost, and part of the cost anyway, of being a disciple. For us too, sometimes the cost of discipleship means putting time and energy and work into the community of faith. So next week, as you saw in the bulletin, as I talked about during the announcements, we're going to have a ministry fair. And one of the things that our ministry fair does is to highlight the many ministries and the ways that we serve as a community of faith. So this display in the back of the narthex, there's going to be more of that, talking about the many ways we try to have an impact on others in our faith community, in our local community, and in the world around us. But the point really of having that ministry fair is not simply for people to say, oh, look, these are really cool things, so that we can be sure to watch the pictures of stuff that we post on Facebook afterwards. The point is so that people can understand how you can get involved, how you can participate, how you can be part of what Jesus is doing in the world around us. Because none of these things will continue to happen unless we're all willing in some way to join in and help, not just follow along. And I think that's part of what Jesus was talking about in today's gospel reading. And for us too, part of the cost is resisting the notion that somebody else is going to pay for all this stuff that we're doing. One of the things, talk about bad mood. So one of the things that puts me in a bad mood politically, because lots of things do, but it often seems to me like in our society, a whole bunch of Americans, all of us, can agree we need a whole bunch of stuff. But we also agree that somebody else should pay for it because I'm already paying too much. And for a couple of generations now, this attitude has often permeated the life of the church as well. We all love a lot of the things that we do as a community of faith. We expect the church will provide all kinds of things, and we are sure that somebody someplace is going to kick in the bucks to make sure it happens. But that is not a foregone conclusion anymore. And one of the things about moving forward is, as we continue to live our life of faith, is that it's not a foregone conclusion that we will be able to afford to do many of the things that we have always expected, unless we're continually, all of us, willing to listen to these words of Jesus and ask what literal cost we're willing to pay in time and in energy, but also in dollars, to ensure that the mission that we say we're committed to continues to have an impact on us and on others in the world around us. Now, it's always great to be part of an exciting trip and be with a happy bunch of people. There's actually nothing wrong with that, and Jesus doesn't say that there is. But today, Jesus also reminds us that that isn't all of what being his disciples is all about. And that's because Jesus wants us to be part of what he's doing, not just observers. Jesus wants to have a continuing impact on our lives, and Jesus wants to work through each of us to have an impact on the lives of others in the world around us. And so Jesus calls us to be people who not only follow, but to be people who live our faith in the lives of others. Jesus calls us to actively involve ourselves in what God is doing in our lives, not just watch. And Jesus calls us to invest ourselves, our time, our energy, and our money into making the mission of Jesus a living reality in the life of the world around us. Amen.